Jai Nitai. Jai. Okay. Let's do Prem Dhani. Oh, Jai. Very cute. Vrajikacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishnom Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishnom Vishnupada Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishnom Vishnupada Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Vaishnav Guru Varga Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur Ki Jai. Fri Caitanya Caritamrita Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Nittai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All Gare Simulavaris Hare Krishna. All Gare Simulavaris Hare Krishna. All Gare Simulavaris Hare Krishna. All Gare Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All Gare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtai Putale Shrimati Radha Govinda Goswami Nitanamine Namaste Prabhupada Devam Gauravani Pacharni Devishisha Shunyavadi Gramya Jana Nishtarini. Okay, so Hare Krishna. We're continuing now from a few days ago's pastimes. And we were reading about Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, because Mahaprabhu, having had returned back to his external consciousness, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he was pleased by this, and so he had his first solid interaction with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is very telling. Sometimes they say the first impression sometimes is deceiving, but in this point, the first impression was very telling of the relationship and pastime that is about to happen. Because Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he's setting the tone for the rest of the chapter. Because he says, Namo Narayanaya, a statement filled with impersonalist conceptions. And then, of course, Sri Mahaprabhu replies with Krishna Matirastu. He's responding now to the Vaishnav conclusion. This back and forth, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya presenting some bogus philosophy, obviously in terms of pastimes. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya is a Nitya Siddha, perfected devotee, but in terms of the pastimes, he is saying these things, and then Mahaprabhu or Mahaprabhu's associates representing him reply in course the appropriate Vaishnav conclusion to correct him. And so, hearing this, he understands this is a Vaishnav sannyasi. And turning to Gopinathacharya, who was with them, who was clearly having some acquaintance with Mahaprabhu and his associates, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya says, who is this person? What is his situation? What is his background? Who is this person who is in front of me? And so, Gopinathacharya, he replies that there was a man named Jagannath who was a resident of Navadvip and whose surname was Mishra Purandra. And so, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the son of this Jagannath Mishra, and his former name was Vishvambhar Mishra. He also happens to be the grandson of Nilambara Chakravarti. And so Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he hears this and he thinks, oh wow, very nice. I know of Nilambara Chakravarti. He was a classmate of my father, Maheshwar Visharad, and I knew him as such. And so he said, my father, he respected Jagannath Mishra a lot. And because of their relationship, and because of the relationship with my father, I respect both Jagannath Mishra and Nilambara Chakravarti. So because of this, I have a strong connection. I have a strong level of respect for these individuals, and therefore, of course, I will have a great amount of respect and affection towards their descendant. And so Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he became very pleased. And it's interesting that he's pleased by this. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he's drawn in by the opulence of Mahaprabhu. He's drawn in by the opulent natures of his birth. And even more so, he's drawn in, even though he's somewhat intrigued by the high levels of the sannyas Mahaprabhu, Krishna having had taken sannyas. He's more intrigued by the Navadvip aspects of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And the Navadvip aspects, or the aspects in Navadvip pastimes, Mahaprabhu, he is manifesting more the Krishna side of the Radha-Krishna deal. So he's drawn in a bit more about the things that are a little to the side. The questions, of course, Jagannath Mishra is such a great personality, but he's being drawn in by questions of familial closeness, not out of any other genuine sentiment, but instead he's being drawn in by, this man, he has some relation with my father, and therefore I'm giving him respect. He's being drawn in by secondary details. So it's reflecting again, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya at this point is not exactly, despite all his learning, he is not exactly cutting to the essence of all his knowledge. And so he was still pleased. He's still right now responding somewhat appropriately, although he'll segue into some maybe unfortunate sentiments soon. And he says, "You are very naturally respectable. Besides, you are a sannyasi. Thus I wish to become your personal servant." And as soon as Mahaprabhu heard this, he replied, "You are a teacher of Vedanta philosophy, and you are the master of all the people in the world and their well-wisher as well. You are also the benefactor of all kinds of sannyasis. And I am a very young sannyasi, and actually have no knowledge of what is good and what is bad. Therefore I am taking shelter of you and accepting you as my spiritual master." Even though Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a grihastha, still, because of his age and deep knowledge of the Vedanta, he would often take the position of educating sannyasis. And therefore he is referred to by the term Jagat Guru. Mahaprabhu says, "Tumi Jagat Guru." He says, you are Jagat Guru, which is a title normally given to those who are instructing all of the sannyasis. So even though he was a grihastha, because he was so learned, he would often train young sannyasis. And so Mahaprabhu, in his humility, is saying, "So you should train me as well." And then he said, "Forget about you serving me. I would like to serve you as my spiritual master." And then he says, "I've come here only to associate with you, and I am now taking shelter of you. Will you kindly maintain me in all respects?" And so, the incident that happened today was a great obstacle for me, but you have kindly relieved me of it. So like this, the Bhattacharya, he says, I will arrange all sorts of things. I will give you the house of my maternal aunt, an apartment belonging to her, and I'll make all arrangements for you to stay there. Furthermore, if you wish to go to have darshan of Jagannath Swami, I will arrange it, that it will be done nicely. And Mahaprabhu, he says, "I will never enter the temple, but shall always view the Lord from the side of the Garuda Stambha." We were speaking very, very at the beginning of this, the significance of the Garuda Stambha. The Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said is actually the most proper place for the Vaishnavas to stay in. And so, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he sent him with Gopinathacharya. And so Gopinathacharya, he went, and Mahaprabhu, he was able to see the early rising of Lord Jagannath, the very early ritualistic worship. And then Gopinathacharya took Mukundatta with him, and they went back to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he said, again, he's intrigued. We're in this section where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he's asking questions. He's very intrigued. Who is this personality who has so much captured my mind? I'm very confused by his nature. Soon he'll have that clarified, but that clarification will result in more confusion, unfortunately. But he asks, and he's asking more and more about who this sannyasi is, and he's glorifying. And he says he is very meek and humble. And then he says, from which sampradaya has he accepted the sannyas order? And what is his name? And then Gopinathacharya says, the Lord's name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya, and his sannyas preceptor is the greatly fortunate Keshava Bharati. And then we find a very interesting comment from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Hearing this, in a sense, his comment about the humility of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is confirmed. Earlier on, again, we were discussing about when a sannyasi takes sannyas, they lose their brahmachari name, and they're given a sannyasi name. Normally Bharati, Tirtha, Puri, Saraswati, like this. But in the case of Mahaprabhu, he kept a brahmachari name. And actually, Prabhupada will clarify later on in the purport that this name, this brahmachari name of Chaitanya, is for the highest of brahmacharis. But it is still a brahmachari name, not a sannyasi name. So this humility of Mahaprabhu is reinforced. Obviously, there was some greater reasons about why Keshava Bharati did not wish to give this name, but one of the many reasons, one of the many other reasons as well, is to reflect Mahaprabhu's humility. That's why he accepted such a name. And so by saying this, by saying his name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Chaitanya being of course a brahmachari name, he is reinforcing this point. Yes, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, you are correct in saying that he is humble. However, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, after hearing this, he does not reply so sweetly. He speaks of the high level of Mahaprabhu, but he says, well, actually, his name is very nice. Krishna's name is nice. Very good. This is something most people can agree upon. But he belongs to the Bharati community. Therefore, he is a second-class sannyasi. Because, of course, there was different rankings given. They're the high class. Different mats will give different rankings. Prabhupada, during this chapter in the purports, he's constantly giving different rankings and systemizations. And in some systems, the name Saraswati is a higher name. In other ones, Tirtha, Ashram, and Saraswati together are considered the highest. In others, it goes Saraswati, then Bharati, and then Puri. And under that system, Keshava Bharati is, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya is saying that Keshava Bharati's line is secondary. Actually, I will get a sannyasi. He's thinking, actually, a sannyasi from the Saraswati line is the highest. So this Krishna name is all right, but he is such a sweet person, such a captivating individual. He should belong to a better sampradaya. And Gopinath Acharya, he is doing as all devotees should. He is revolted by hearing such nonsense. And he speaks heavily. And we will find in this whole chapter that Gopinath Acharya speaks very heavily. Sometimes we are afraid when we hear nonsense to speak too harshly. And of course, harshness is not necessary. But to speak boldly and to speak strongly is the style of the Vaishnav Prachar. The preaching of the Vaishnav is to be direct and strong. And Gopinath Acharya is doing like this. Srila Prabhupada, he was like a lion. It's not that Srila Prabhupada wouldn't hear an atheist and say, okay, that's all right, you go your way. He would chastise the person for being a fool. If some people would try to call out Prabhupada on all sorts of things, they would try and capture him. Prabhupada would lash out, not with anger, but with the idea that he is representing, and in that point representing the parampara. He is representing Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so an attack against him is actually an attack against Mahaprabhu, and therefore he must defend him. And this is the same thing. It is an attack on Mahaprabhu whenever some bogus idea is being said. Srila Prabhupada, he would never back down or compromise. He would speak strongly and boldly. Once an interviewer, I'm pretty sure in Australia, when Prabhupada was arriving in Australia, they were asking Prabhupada, they were saying, because they were trying to say, you're in this for the money, all sorts of little ideas they had, and they said, how much money do you have? How much money does this Hare Krishna movement have? And Srila Prabhupada, he said, actually, we have all the money in the world. We're just waiting for you to give it to us. So Prabhupada, rather than going back and saying, oh no, actually, meekly saying, actually this and this and that, he very boldly, he said the actual conception. Of course, in a sense, all the money is ours, because we are not using it for ourselves, we are using it for Krishna, and it belongs to Krishna's service. He didn't say anything wrong, but he didn't hide away. Instead, he boldly went out. And so strongly he spoke. We read in Prabhupada's purports, if you turn to any shloka in Bhagavatam, I say there's always maybe a 60-70% chance that you're going to hear how nonsense the Sahajiyas and the Mayavadis and all these other bogus materialists are. That is the attitude of the Vaishnav, and we will see Gopinath Acharya is so beautifully embodying that in these following discussions. So he says, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not rely on any external formality. There is no need for him to accept the sannyas order from a superior sampradaya. We were hearing when we were speaking about the pastimes of the Dandabhanga Lila, that actually Mahaprabhu doesn't need to accept sannyas at all, in a sense, for his preaching. It is not necessary for the Supreme Lord. Only to distribute his mercy he is doing this. It is not the fault or the necessity of Mahaprabhu, as far as the external purposes go, for him to accept sannyas. It is the necessity of all of the fallen Kali Yuga souls who are unable to appreciate the mercy he is giving. Mahaprabhu doesn't need to do anything. Everything he is doing in regards to that preaching, in regards to taking these things up, all of that is done entirely out of mercy for the misqualifications and for the faults and for the shortcomings of the Kali Yuga souls. For that self-satisfied Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no need for anything. And so, the Bhattacharya, he continued though, making his point, and he said, Mahaprabhu, he's very young. He's very young. How can he keep the principles of sannyas? He's such a young man. Again, Mahaprabhu has never properly taken birth. Mahaprabhu he is co-eternal with eternity. In fact, time comes forth from Mahaprabhu. Mahavishnu is only a tiny little expansion of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahavishnu is just a fraction of his fullness. And yet that same Mahavishnu is the one who is putting time into the pradhana to make it the Mahatattva at the creation. He is the one from whom the time factor is coming out from. So that same person who a segment of his greatness is in fact generating and pushing time into the material world. That same personality, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, is saying he is too young. He is not having enough years to fully grasp sannyas life, and therefore Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he says, I shall continually recite Vedanta philosophy before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so that he may remain fixed in his renunciation, and after being fully renounced, he may become a proper Mayavadi like me. After teaching him the essence of renunciation, after teaching that person, we know the 6 opulences, one of them is he is so full of renunciation. After teaching that person who is so full of renunciation, after I teach him how to be renounced, then he can be learned in Advaita Vedanta. And he will learn the true nature of the Shastras, that we are all actually Brahman. I will make him a good Mayavadi, and then he'll understand the proper nature of things. Very merciful. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, if Mahaprabhu would like, I could bring him into a first-class sampradaya by offering him saffron cloth and performing the reformatory process again. So he's saying, even though he's not a sannyasi himself, I will bring a sannyasi from the Saraswati line. And then Mahaprabhu, I will be able to elevate him up. At that point, he will have lost his youthful splendor. He will lose all his misconceptions about the world not being one homogeneous soup. He will lose all of these ideas, and then he will be qualified, and then I will bring a very sweet first-class sannyasi, and then we will elevate the level of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These things are best told as a joke. And Gopinath Acharya and Mukunda Datta, they responded exactly how a devotee should. Srila Prabhupada, we know so famously in his commentary on Upadeshamrita, he's speaking about the pushings, and we know Krodha Vegam, the pushing of anger. And Prabhupada doesn't say, don't be angry, just be chilled out all the time. Prabhupada doesn't say this. Prabhupada says, don't be angry about personal insult, but if somebody is blaspheming the Lord or the Lord's devotees, then have all the anger. Anger can be used in devotional service just as much as equanimity and happiness can. If a Vaishnav takes a personal insult, then he should be happy. Very nice. This person actually is understanding my true fallen nature, is the humility of the Vaishnav. But if somebody is blaspheming Mahaprabhu or Mahaprabhu's devotees, then that is another case, and then anger is very appropriate. Prabhupada uses very famously the wonderful example of Hanuman with his tail on fire burning down Lanka. So much anger was there, and how can we say that's anything less than the highest devotion? So like this, anger is appropriate in spiritual life. Sometimes people will think, oh, we shouldn't be angry, we shouldn't be angry. In general, we shouldn't. But if we hear blasphemy, our blood should boil. And their blood was boiling. And hearing this, Gopinath Acharya addressed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya as follows. He says, my dear Bhattacharya, you do not know the greatness of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are found in him to the highest degree. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is celebrated as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are ignorant in this connection find the conclusion of knowledgeable men very difficult to understand. And so he says, and then the disciples of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya who are there, they're thinking, oh, he's attacking he's attacking all of our philosophy, he's attacking everything we're learning, we need to defend this. We need to defend our very correct conceptions of Mayavad and rejecting Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they say, by what evidence do you conclude that Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord? And so, there, Gopinath Acharya, he says, the statements of authorized acharyas who understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are proof. Here we find the proper response. So many people, they're establishing all of these, here's Bhagavan. When we were looking at the Upper Sampradayas so long ago, so many people, they just turn up and they say, look, I'm Krishna. And people are like, oh, good point, you're Krishna. People accept it at that. People will accept all these bogus and spurious things. And not just who is an avatar. So many things. If you go around and you speak, unfortunately, in many devotee communities, many people will be saying all sorts of things that have no foundation in Shastra. I remember I was speaking with some youth, and one youth, he was putting on his neck beads. And he was wearing his neck beads because he was not wearing them before. I was encouraging him. If you feel, connection to ISKCON, you should try to wear Tulsi Mala. And then somebody chastised him and said, only if you're chanting 16 rounds every day can you wear neck beads. But the Shastras are very clear. Even the most sinful person can wear Kanti Mala. We should not be so confident to think that our impurities can make Tulsi Maharani impure. We should not have this weird confidence thinking because I'm impure, I can somehow counteract her purity. The Shastras are clear that there is no such qualification like this. But all these ideas will happen. And because they do not wish to go to what Shastra says, as has been given by the Acharyas, what Srila Prabhupada and the Shastras say, then all sorts of opinions will be had, and many discouraging traditions will come up. And so we will create so many blockages, so many misconceptions. We will maybe go like the upper sampradayas off into some nonsense. We will have some upper siddhanta. And if there is a misconception of the siddhanta, of the true philosophy, of the actual siddhanta, then that will take the place of the proper conclusion. An incorrect conclusion will take the place of the proper conclusion, and therefore the proper conclusion cannot enter it so easily. All sorts of things will happen if we deviate from following clearly. The response is not, oh, can't you clearly see? Mahaprabhu has done this miracle, that miracle. Mahaprabhu has done so many miracles, and they're very sweet to hear. But the response isn't that he has done these miracles. The response is, it is according to the Shastric evidence. And it is according to the words of the authorized acharyas. That is the proof. It is those things which are the highest evidence. And therefore, those things are the proper response to any issue, in anything, constantly. It should be done under the guidance of the acharyas. And so they reply, and they say, okay, very good, but we derive knowledge of the absolute truth by logical hypothesis. And they say like this, so they say, by logical hypothesis, we are understanding things through logic. Even then, this is what is the point of them saying such things? Actually, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was a professor, we know, in his Navadvip pastimes. He was a great teacher of Nyaya. We know there's the 6 schools. The 6 Astic, Orthodox Vedic schools. And of them, Nyaya is one. There is, and Vedanta is the other. Vedanta is the one that Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya is teaching. So the Nyaya school, they are well known for very strongly having mastered logic. And actually there's a very sweet pastime, because one of the great acharyas of the Nyaya school, Raghunath Shiromani, he's very well known. I'm pretty sure he's even got an Encyclopedia Britannica entry. So he's well known. He has a lot of reverence. And he actually he was a contemporary of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he met him one day, and they were speaking. They were crossing the Ganga and Navadvip together. They were crossing, and they were on a boat. And on the boat they were together, and Raghunath Shiromani, he was speaking to Mahaprabhu. And he was saying, Mahaprabhu, I hear you, he wasn't saying Mahaprabhu at the time, but he was saying, I've heard that you are a great scholar of Nyaya. And so Mahaprabhu replied, he said, no, I'm not. He said, with all his humility, he said, I do not know much. And then he said, but I've heard you've composed a book, you've composed a literature on Nyaya. And Mahaprabhu, he said, actually, yes, this is true. And he had it with him. That's why he was asking him on the boat. And so Raghunath Shiromani, he said, please, could I read it? I would like to see it. And so Mahaprabhu, very humbly, he gave him the book. And in giving the book to Raghunath Shiromani, he began to read it. And reading it, he began to cry and cry and cry and cry. And Mahaprabhu, he looked at him and he said, why are you crying? Why are you upset? And Raghunath Shiromani, he said, my great ambition is to be the greatest scholar in this field. I want to be known as the greatest scholar. I want this to be my achievement. I want, not even for our purposes of ahankar, I just want to be able to give a great contribution. But no contribution I could ever give would be meaningful when a text as amazing and is so perfectly grasping the philosophy as this exists. And Mahaprabhu said, oh, okay. And Mahaprabhu said, okay then, if that is the case, you can give me back the book. And so, Raghunath Shiromani, he gave the book back to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu took the book and he threw it over the side of the boat into the Ganga. And he said, okay then, now you can go ahead and be the greatest scholar. This is the soft heart of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is so merciful. In that moment he thought, what's the point? Anyways, Mahaprabhu knew it was coming. His contribution wouldn't be in Nyaya. It would be in a sense in Vedanta, but in the greatest sense it would be in propagating Sankirtan, not in propagating logical rules. But even ignoring that is a soft heart of Mahaprabhu. And furthermore, however, it is showing that he did have a depth of understanding of logic. It is not that the devotees are merely sentimental. Logic does play a role. But this logic here, divorced of the understanding of submission to the acharyas and the shastras, this is not proper. And so they are saying like this, that we derive knowledge of the absolute truth by logical hypothesis. When that's somebody's response to the statements of the acharyas, if they hear Srila Prabhupada say something and they say, oh, well, actually, they cannot understand what Prabhupada is saying. So many people, of course, that's not to say that one should blindly just accept if they do not understand. One can humbly request a clarification. But many people, Srila Prabhupada will say something and then they'll say, oh, but this research says this research says that, he must be wrong. Or not even he must be wrong. They will just say, well, science says this, well, logic says this. If that is one's response, then there is no point even exposing them to what Prabhupada is saying because they will not be able to access it. Because they are responding the same as these disciples of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. They are hearing that actually the authorized words of the acharyas, they are the authority, and they're saying, oh, well, actually, we follow logic here. And so Gopinath Acharya, he explains that one cannot attain real knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by such logical hypothesis and argument. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by His mercy, not by guesswork or hypothesis. And so the Acharya continued. He said, if one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favor by dint of devotional service, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's saying, all that you have said, it is not valid. It will not get you where you need to go. Maybe we can use science, maybe we can use logic to build a phone. Maybe we can do it to build a building. We can build a few planes that fly somewhere. But we cannot understand the supreme understanding of transcendence. We cannot fully enter into there. So he's saying the means by which you are trying to enter into these things is not valid, it is not proper. And then how does he continue? After discrediting that, he clarifies what is the proper way to enter. And it is by the dint of devotional service, but which is, of course, a product of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Any devotional service, if we speak ever of anyone achieving anything of devotional service, that actually does not mean, even though directly it is speaking of one's devotional service earning something, it is actually indirectly only speaking of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Because we cannot make any progress, we cannot make any steps in devotional life without the mercy of the Vaishnavas. So when he's saying by the dint of one's devotional service, he's meaning by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Because how can one make any devotional progress, any devotional service, if they do not have the Vaishnav's mercy? That is the implicit point here. Yes, bhakti is the effectual thing. That is the thing which is practically having the effect. But the bhakti cannot exist without the Vaishnav's mercy. And so he quotes Bhagavatam and says, "My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate in order to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years." And again, everything must be followed by Shastric Praman. Even making this point, it is not that he has said this and now he is happy to conclude. Okay, I've made this point, I've explained the real nature, he is then going to Bhagavatam. Actually, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he would tell his disciples, if any of you are preaching, if any of you are giving class, and you are not quoting Shastra to back up everything that you are saying, then you are not my disciple. Do not say you are a disciple of mine if you are speaking and not quoting Shastra afterwards. Because then you are not following chastely to parampara. You are not following chastely the system that we have been given. The point, the mercy of the parampara is that it is carrying through the message of Shastra. It is carrying through the message of the great Acharya's words. And if you're not repeating those words, then you have no connection to me. Because that is the connection that I'm giving. So do not call. So he would say, if you ever go, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, appearance festival or disappearance festival, his disciples will always say this. Guru Maharaj would say, if you do not say Shastra, then do not call yourself my disciple. So this is the Gaur Govinda Maharaj is very, very heavy, but very sweet as well. Again, this is he's speaking directly the correct conception to be had. So Gopinath Acharya, he is behaving in this way that Gaur Govinda Maharaj is encouraging all of his disciples to do so. Even after making a point that logically makes a lot of sense, why we need the mercy of the Supreme Lord, still he quotes Bhagavatam. Still he quotes Shastra. And so Gopinath Acharya then tells Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, you are a great scholar and a teacher of many disciples. Indeed, there is no scholar like you on earth. And this is one of those things sometimes we say, where's the but coming in? Because we know that people will say something nice and then they're going to say but and they're going to say something else, and it contrasts it a lot. And here it's coming in. Nonetheless, because you are bereft of even a pinch of the Lord's mercy, you cannot understand him, even though he is present in your home. Again, I was saying at the beginning, we will hear some heavy language from Gopinath Acharya, and here it is. He's speaking heavily. And sometimes, this heavy speaking, it's not seen as something people anticipate. But actually, some of the greatest mercies that can be given in spiritual life are chastisement and heavy speaking. When people are heavily corrected, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it's described in Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav, would not immediately chastise his new disciples so much. Maybe sometimes if they're doing some major issue is there. But his disciples who were more intimate, who were closer, it was for them that he reserved that great mercy of heavy chastisement. It is when he had that intimate relation with them that he thought, now I can give them this sweet mercy. Actually, it is the greatest mercy, and we will hear later on, as we come to the end, when we hear of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, the Vaishnav, he will sing about how gloriously he received the mercy of Gopinath Acharya. Chastisement from the devotee is nothing less than a great mercy. And so, because it cuts away the central part of our existence in the material world, the central part, the root cause of our avidya and our existence in material life and not in spiritual life with Krishna and Goloka, is ahankar. And ahankar, nothing cuts away more at ahankar than the mercy of chastisement. And Mahanidhi Swami actually says, even if one is being chastised for something that they do not do, so you might think sometimes you get chastised for something and you're thinking, I didn't do that. Why am I getting chastised? Why am I getting told off for something I didn't do? He said the moment you say but, or you try to explain yourself, that means the false ego is still there. Because even if you didn't do it, that chastisement is still mercy. The moment you are thinking but and you want to defend yourself, what are you defending? You're defending your ahankar, your ego. Even if you might think, I did not deserve it, Actually, you should be thinking, wow, I got some mercy I didn't deserve. I didn't even do anything to qualify for that chastisement, but still I got this sweet chastisement. Still I got this sweet mercy. That should be the response. Even if one thinks, hey, actually I didn't do that. Actually that was so-and-so Prabhu. That was so-and-so Mataji. That wasn't me. Still, one should feel grateful for receiving that. And if one does not, if one tries to defend themselves, what are they defending? Because the chastisement of the devotee is not attacking your soul. It is attacking your ahankar. They're not attacking your soul. So if you're still identifying with the false ego, if you're still identifying with that ahankaric part of your life, then you will still respond with, oh, but, and you'll try to defend that ahankar. But if one is on that platform of realizing they're their soul, they'll say, thank you. Now you're cutting away more at this ahankar, which gets so much in the way of my spiritual life. So, chastisement is mercy. We should not think that Gopinath Acharya has gotten angry and now he's being a little mean, or now that he's just being a little rough. He is being rough, and he is being rough to defend Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's doing so in the most merciful of ways. By pouring down this heavy language on Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he is giving such a sweet mercy. And so we continue. Gopinath Acharya says, it is not your fault, it is the verdict of the scriptures. You cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by scholarship. My dear Gopinath Acharya, please speak with care. This is what Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is replying, He's a bit taken off guard. What is the proof that you have received the mercy of the Lord? And this is an interesting point. He says, hey, you're telling me I'm bereft of mercy. That's implying you have mercy. What are you trying to say here? And Gopinath Acharya, he says, he just says, yes, I have. And that is not such an arrogant thing to say. Sometimes people might say, hey, what's he saying? That he's received the mercy of the Lord? But the definition of mercy is it is something you do not deserve. He's not saying I earned the mercy of the Lord. He's saying I received the mercy of the Lord. He's not saying I'm so great, I earned the mercy of the Lord and you didn't. You do not earn mercy, you earn rewards. Mercy is given as a gift. So it is not arrogant for him to say, oh, I have received that mercy, and here is the evidence for it. That is not arrogance. That's merely acknowledging the mercy of Mahaprabhu. That is acknowledging the greatness of the Supreme Lord, that he is mercifully distributing this thing. He's not saying, again, it's not some arrogant claim, as some may read it. It would be if he was saying, I have earned it by all these amazing feats that I've done. But no, he's merely saying I have received it. Mercy is received. And he says knowledge of the summum bonum, the absolute truth, is evidence of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. You have seen the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during his absorption in an ecstatic mood. And despite directly perceiving the symptoms of the Supreme Lord in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you cannot understand him, and this is commonly called Maya, or illusion. Again, he's not pulling his punches. He's telling him what's what. A person influenced by the external energy is called a bahirmukha jana, a mundane person, because despite his perception, he cannot understand the real substance. Here again, very heavy. He's telling him, you're in Maya, Prabhu. You're in Maya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, because you have not recognized this, and this is showing you are bereft of the Lord's mercy. Because we were discussing at the beginning, he was so close. He said, no normal human being could have these symptoms, therefore I'm really confused. Normally a person would say, or a person who had received the mercy of the Supreme Lord, through via media of the devotees, would see that and say, he is showing these symptoms that no human being can display, maybe he's the Supreme Lord. But instead he says, oh, okay, what to do? I have no idea what's going on. So, and why is that? Again, Gopinath Acharya is saying because he is bereft. He is under Maya. And he is bereft, again, of the mercy of the Lord. So like this, we hear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he begins to smile. And he begins to speak these words. He says, We're just having a discussion among friends and considering the points described in scriptures. Please do not become angry. I'm simply speaking on the strength of the Shastras. Please don't take any offense. He's trying to soften the tone a little. Again, as much as we can say and as much as we can think, obviously, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is a great eternal associate, is a great devotee, but even playing this role, he might not be knowing this. But sometimes we ourselves will respond like this, We can think in our mind, chastisement is mercy, but when you hear those words, you'll think, let's calm down a little. Let's relax, because they are words that bite. And they bite a lot, again, because they cut to that core of our material existence. The core of all of the identity that we feel we have in this material world is based on that ahankar that the Vaishnava is roasting away. It should be uncomfortable. It would be confusing if it wasn't uncomfortable. Because it's very uncomfortable for that basic assumption upon which our whole existence, of which we have had so many millions and millions of births in this material world, under that basic assumption to have it torn away from us, it makes sense that that would be uncomfortable. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is certainly a great, uncommon devotee, but we cannot accept him as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu because, according to Shastra, there is no incarnation in this age of Kali. Another name for Lord Vishnu is Triyug, because there is no incarnation of Lord Vishnu in Kali Yuga. Indeed, this is the verdict of the revealed scriptures. And upon hearing this, again, Gopinathacharya became very happy. Very unhappy, sorry. And this is an interesting point. Of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he's manifesting this pastime in order for these ideas to be refuted. We should not think he's genuinely, he's giving a very sweet pastime. But some people do speak like this. Some people will quote Shastras very deeply to try and show, this Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, great devotee of Krishna. Krishna, not so much, but great devotee, yes. And there's a saying the Christians have, which is that even the devil can quote scripture. Even though we should base everything on Shastra, even it is not necessarily to have a knowledge of the words of Shastra doesn't require any qualification. Anyone can learn a few grammatical rules, memorize a few syllables. Will they have any knowledge of the meaning of those texts? No. But will they be able to somehow quote them? Yes. So sometimes, even though Shastra is having such an important role, that is why Gopinathacharya is saying the words of the Acharyas. The words of the Acharyas only are explaining the Shastras. But it is also that qualification of the Acharya which brings explaining that Shastra. That is what's proper. So many people can quote Shastra and they can say so many silly things. And then we know the famous Mahajano, that famous text. And we must follow in the footsteps of the Mahajanas. So that is why we need Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. If we just have Shastra and no Guru to explain it, no Sadhu to clarify, then what will we understand? And how many people can say all sorts of things? And so Gopinathacharya said, you consider yourself the knower of all Vedic scriptures. However, Srimad Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata are the two most important Vedic scriptures, but you have paid no attention to their statements. Many people will say like this, Rig Veda, Upanishads, very nice, everything else I will ignore. But really, this is not proper, and it's not humble. Even though Bhagavatam, no matter what yuga you're in, it is the highest Shastra, we must also understand that a lot of the Vedas have been lost. They slowly degrade over time. At least our memories do, not the actual Vedas. And so they progressively become more and more forgotten. The Puranas are especially written for this age, in order for people with the lesser intellect that we have to understand. And people might say all these sort of things. They might say, oh, well, therefore it's simplified and doesn't have the full knowledge. But actually is the opposite. Right now, what it is it's like there's two texts. You have an official science report, the actual results of scientific testing in a lab, the results, and half the results are missing. Half the results are no longer there in our possession. And then you have another thing written by that same scientist who wrote that research, but he has written in simple English, in plain language, for anyone to understand the meaning of this. Even if you had all of the results, It is very hard to understand those things. But if that scientist who is very well versed in the meanings of those results writes in simple English a way for everyone to understand what is the essence, what is the point of that result, and has preserved it, the more intelligent thing to do is to read the more well-preserved and more understandable text that has been coming from the correct source. So they will neglect these things. And we'll have to conclude on this. But just an interesting point on this, speaking on Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very perfectly preserved. The Bhagavatam textual variants are very small, and they pretty much mean the same thing. Bhagavatam is a very sweetly preserved book. However, Mahabharata, even though it is a high pramana, it is, and even though it has a very high status, and even though its pastimes are very sweet, actually, because of the way it's spread out, it is a little corrupted. It is not to say it is corrupted to be philosophically incorrect, but wherever it moved, it sort of got retold in different... Hanumat Preshaka Maharaj and Hridayananda Das Goswami were both explaining this. That actually, in different areas, it will have different variants. And because of that, it is very difficult to ascertain what is the original, is this an interpolation? Is this something that has been added in? For example, when the Pandavas were born, according to strict Manu Smriti, Manu Shastras, the way they're born is not proper. The way that they need certain sanskaras to be performed. But those don't get performed. And so in South India, which was very paka, we know Srila Prabhupada would say, the South Indian Brahmins, they are the real paka Brahmins. We should learn Brahminical culture from them. Because South India had that very intense paka mood, in a lot of South Indian variants of Mahabharata, there's a whole section just added in, which is not found anywhere else, and that's how we know it was added in, where suddenly these demigods and rishis appear in the middle of the Mahabharata, and they perform all the sanskars, so that all the Pandavas are fine, and then they leave, and then the story keeps on going. So we see stuff like this appears. Mahabharata, its essential story, of course, is bona fide. And the original is very high, very authoritative. And, of course, often the acharyas quote Mahabharata. And when they quote Mahabharata, we know it's bona fide. Because through the eyes of the pure devotee, they are able to perceive everything. They are able to tell. And even when they repeat it, then it becomes, of course, of a very high value. But some sections of Mahabharata is a bit hard to go through and to say all of it, not because all of it is of such a high authority, even though it is, if it is Mahabharata, but we do not know what is interpolated and what is not. That is why Mahabharata is a little difficult sometimes. Of course, its pastimes in general have been preserved, and so it's very sweet to hear, but there's another reason why we should mainly focus our attention on Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is perfectly preserved. We do not have such issues. Anyway, so tomorrow we will continue... No, on Monday we will continue hearing a bit more about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's chastisement received from Gopinathacharya, and then we will begin to hear Mahaprabhu completely pulling apart the notions of his Mayavad philosophy. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur ki jai, Fri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Radha Govinda Goswami Nitamine Namaste Prabhupada Devam Gauravai Pachani Nivishesha Shimani Gramya Jana Nishtarine